You can learn and adopt more graceful, gracious behavior if you decide to.
You maybe are picking clothes that you are more graceful in and you don't even realize it.
When you feel attractive, you're going to feel more graceful, and it's going to be much easier to be aware of it.
I think you can read people and read how firmly you want to shake their hand. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Fascinating Womanhood channel. On our channel, we talk about everything that has to do with developing femininity and building strong, long-lasting, loving relationships. I am Sherry Lynn, and I'm here with my mom, Dixie Andelin Forsyth. Hi.
Hi.
So welcome back to our Ladylike Behavior series. We're doing this series for all of our ladies who have been asking us so many questions on reclaiming their femininity and really trying to cultivate that in their lives. So this series is dedicated to them. We're going through some sections in Dixie's book, Fascinating Womanhood for the Timeless Woman, that talk about ladylike behavior. And we're breaking it down just a little bit more for everyone to take each point and really clarify it. Today, we are talking about physical grace. So I think about a lot of different things when I think about what physical grace means. What does that mean to you?
Physical grace has to do with the way you move, the way you speak, the way your hands move, the way you carry yourself.
When I think about physical grace, I immediately go to like a ballerina. And I think to myself, oh, she's that way. And I don't know if I could ever be that way. And I think there's a lot of ladies out there that might be thinking that physical grace is not you or something you can't attain, or maybe you're perhaps born more graceful. What do you think about that? The ladies that think that?
Well, I happen to believe in people, and I think that we can learn many things. We all learn many things in our life. There's things we can say, I want to be more like that, so we adopt it. You can learn and adopt more graceful, gracious behavior if you decide to. And a ballerina, I'm glad you mentioned a ballerina. They're certainly not born being able to dance. They have to take many years of grueling practice and work in order to become a prima ballerina. It takes many years. There's nothing wrong with us working on this because it's a great thing to have, and it comes more naturally for us.
It's not about you being this perfect example of delicateness. It's more about you refining yourself. And right. I think all the topics that we're going to cover in today's video have to do with reaching this goal of physical grace, that have to do with just becoming more charming and pleasing. So it's actually very attainable, and you can do these
very
things.
Much.
And before we get into our little list, because we have a small list of things we want to go over, what do you think the impact is of a woman having physical grace, developing the skill? What impact is that going to have on men?
It makes them feel more comfortable. It makes them feel more acceptable. It makes them want to be around you. It gives you more influence with people. Influence. Now you can use that influence for bad, but why would you? When you use influence for bad, it always ends up not working very well anyway and hurting you in the end. It helps others to be more accepted, to be more validated. All we have to do is imagine how we feel if we're around a gracious person.
How do you know if you're graceful? How do you know if this is something that you need to work on? Like, how do you understand this?
I think that when you kind of look inwardly to yourself, have you ever watched a movie and think, I would like to be more like that? If you would like to be more like that, you probably can use some of those attributes. If you want to be more like that, there's a sense of something's missing in me that I want to add to. And even if you do have a lot of grace, there's always more. I don't think you ever kind of, arrive at where you're, now I'm there. Yeah. We all have many areas of our lives to work on, but that's okay. This is a lifelong process.
I agree. I think it's fair to say that everyone can work on this, almost everyone. Why not? And you might have been good at it at one point in your life and it's maybe slipped away. I don't know. So these are great points that we're going to go over today that will help you to attain a little bit more physical grace. So there are so many aspects of physical grace. We are going to cover two very important points, and each point is pretty lengthy, so that's why there's only two. So we're going to talk about hair and your appearance, which is the more obvious one probably, and then we're also going to talk about posture and poise. because part of physical grace is your conversation skills, but we talked about this and we realized that conversation skills was its own video. So we're only going to discuss these two parts of physical grace because there is just so much that we want to cover. So getting into appearance, we've done lots of videos on appearance. I think we just did one that was touched on it a little bit for singles. We also did a body language video, but we want to talk about appearance in terms of physical grace and how it kind of goes together. First note about appearance is dressing for your body. Why is it important and why does that relate to physical grace to dress for your body?
Have you ever put on something and you just feel really good in it? You feel attractive. You feel like it's flattering. You feel like, gosh, I wish everything in my closet made me feel this way. I know I do. And then there's these other things you think, what did I buy that for? Well, I better use it because I spent money on it. You know, those things that make you feel that way are probably things that do look good on you, that do flatter you. Learning about that is really kind of a skill because some people more naturally know on the rack what will look good on them. And others of us don't. Others of us have to learn through, I hate to say it, trial and error. In my case, lots of error, you know, where I finally learned I can't wear this. I don't look good in that. Or I do look good in this.
When I think about the most graceful women, the women that I admire the most, the way that they look, the polish that they show in their body, and they're not all necessarily tiny little, you know, like ballerina kind of women. When I think about those women, I realize now that we're talking about this, they always wear things that look good on them. They always take in their appearance. And part of that is, like you said, figuring out what looks good on your shape. And I know a lot of ladies might hear dressing for your body and they say, well, great, I'm just going to put something on that's really comfortable. And what's comfortable isn't necessarily what's going to flatter your shape. And you can find comfort with flattering your shape, but you have to do a little bit of experimenting to figure that out. And I think a lot of ladies, that's where they stop because they say, well, you know, I'm really tall. I can't find anything that fits me. Or I'm really short. I can't find anything that fits me. So I'm just going to go for this. This is where we're saying find things. Don't fall into the trends. Don't worry about the trends that are going on. Just find something that fits you. And it doesn't have to be a lot of pieces.
I have to say, we live in a time right now, maybe it'll change. I hope it doesn't, where there's so many styles that are in style. When I was real young, there were certain like skirt lengths that were in style. And if it was any longer than that, you were out of style.
Yeah.
Now you can wear, I've seen sites where they have mini, midi, and maxi dresses, and they're all in style. There's bell bottom pants, there's straight leg pants, all these styles. There's so many styles that you can choose from. But the point is that when you feel attractive, when you feel pretty, when you've dressed up, you're going to be more graceful. When you feel attractive, you're going to feel more graceful, and it's going to be much easier to be aware of it.
The next point we have under appearance is fabrics and then colors. So fabrics are really important. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you select your fabrics?
Well, some of it's practical, and I know some of you are practical too. I like fabrics that are not dry clean only, if possible, but fabrics that are soft, that don't wrinkle, that you don't have to iron every time you pull them out of the dryer. Considering all those things in your fabrics, patterns that are attractive. As far as colors go, find colors that you feel good in. I remember my mom once thought that there were certain colors she couldn't wear that didn't look good on her when the reality is it's more like certain shades of colors that she probably wasn't as good on her as maybe others. Picking shades of colors, patterns, things like that. And if you don't naturally have, I hate to say good taste because it's all in the eye of the beholder. If you feel like you're lacking, there's so many things online you can look at, get help with as far as colors, fabrics.
One of the things that I really enjoy about this subject of fabrics is that a lot of ladies think of femininity and being graceful and looking polished as these restrictive clothes that aren't comfortable, bows, ruffles, things that are just kind of the cliche feminine things. It's not just that. If you really look at a really soft fabric, I mean, your guy holding you and snuggling you he's going to be delighted to snuggle you or to kind of get closer to you.
You probably do too, but I have a pair of yoga pants that I wear for the gym that Bob loves when I wear them because the fabric, he just feels like touching it.
Well, we had a thread on our Facebook group the other day that it just really stood out to me when we're talking about this. these ladies saying, well, my husband doesn't like me dressing up. Like my husband doesn't like me wearing fancy clothes. He likes me in my, jeans and t-shirt or whatever. And it makes me think of what you just said. Well, perhaps you're mistaking. Maybe he likes some of your jeans because you pick some soft kind of like, there's some really luscious fabrics for jeans. There's some really great soft t-shirts out there. Maybe he just loves the texture of what you're wearing. You never know. Maybe just also notices that you're very comfortable in those clothes and he likes your physical grace when you're wearing those clothes. That could be happening too, is that you maybe are picking clothes that you are more graceful in and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Fabrics are important for you as well as for him.
The next one is not going to extremes. Now, this has to do with modesty and taste. So what do we mean by that?
Leave something to the imagination as far as you're showing your body. It's not graceful. It's not gracious. I know that we mean to be feminine, to be attractive. And I think that's the goal with all of us. And it depends on the person. If some people are more well endowed than others, and it doesn't take much for them to look like they're spilling out. You know what I mean? And others, it's just different. Well, but leave something to the imagination as far as what you show in your body.
I like what you're saying about, the dressing for your size. A tall lady is not going to be able to get away with the shorter silhouettes as the shorter lady. And you just need to find that balance for you. But showing a ton of skin, whether it's, appropriate for you or not, I don't know. I think just being really thoughtful about how much skin you're showing, because a gracious lady, when you think about we're talking about ladylike behavior. A gracious lady is not going to be showing a ton, and it's okay to show a little, and it's okay to, like we said earlier, dress for your best part. So if you have a tiny waist, or you have tiny or long, lean legs, or whatever it is, everyone has a best part of their figure, and whatever the best parts of your figure are, I think it's great to show that off, but be thoughtful about that balance of showing everything off or showing off too much, because you're going to send the wrong message.
I agree. Yeah.
Also with taste, one thing I just want to say about taste is really being thoughtful about some of the prints and the cuts of things that you're wearing. If you're wearing, I've seen this, like some ladies like to wear like cartoon printed things, and I guess that's fine if you're into that, but just, you don't want to send off that message that you yourself are childish. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you mean.
I just think there's prints that you can pick that are a little bit more polished, such as floral prints or plaids. And there's even really cute stripes that you can get. There's even, if you're not into prints, you can get textures, lace. There's so many different things that you could choose, rather than that maybe perhaps a little bit more.
The same. You mean not just the same thing?
Right. Well, just, I don't know. I keep going back to this like cartoon thing. I see it a lot. I see, especially with older, more mature women, it's just the cartoon kind of prints are just not the most polished look. If you want to wear them from time to time, I think that's just great, for fun. But if you're going to Disney World and you wear the Disney stuff, that's great. But if you're wearing that on a daily basis, you're not sending this message of polish.
I agree. Yeah.
And then the last one is just being thoughtful about self-care and taking care of yourself with your appearance.
Taking care of yourself is number one, good for you. And it affects people around you. It may not seem like it does, but it does. The messages that you send off just with your physical presence and how you move, and the way you dress affects how you move. Have you ever felt really gross because you've been under the weather and been in bed and you haven't bathed, and then you clean up and the difference in how you feel? And you think, I know for me, I think if I've just slept in a little bit and then I get dressed, I think, how could I stand to have not gotten dressed sooner? Because it feels so much better.
Yeah, sometimes this is even just about, do I go ahead and buy myself the extra little thing at the store, beauty item that makes me feel good, that no one's even going to see? And I think some people take the self-care thing a little bit in the wrong direction and say that women that are pampering themselves regularly are spoiled and they're not as hard workers or something. I've heard all kinds of wild things about this whole self-care thing. And I think it's about finding that balance for yourself. And
because you can go too far. You can all be about me, which is not where we're going either. I think so many of us don't have the best self-esteem. If everyone had great self-esteem, we could more minimize some of this, but a lot of us don't. It's hard to keep it, even if when you have it, because some people are mean and the world can be kind of tough. Sometimes the little things you do in self-care, whether it's filing your nails or putting bath salts in your bath, or some nice conditioner, something for your hair, can make the difference in that day, how you feel about yourself, which affects how you feel and act towards others, and how graceful you are and gracious.
When I think about physical grace, the one of the people that I just constantly am looking at out there right now is Kate Middleton. I know a lot of our ladies love Kate Middleton. And the reason why I thought of her just now is you mentioned something about just self-esteem. And when I think about her and all the things that she goes through, her courage, and every big public appearance that she does, she just shows this amazing courage. And I think to myself, there's no way she's not taking care of herself. There's no way and I know she works really hard too, but she's a mom and she obviously has tons of help, but she could easily just let go of herself. She could easily become, an addict or something. There's so many things that could happen to her because of all the pressure she's under, and she doesn't. She chooses to be better than that. And I always I'm amazed at how graceful she is and how much of a lady she is.
When you think of somebody in her position, she wasn't raised like that. So she was kind of adopted into the royal family, but everywhere you go, people snapping photos of you. I think that would get very old very fast. And she, even though that looks like candid, she's always smiling.
She's always smiling. She always looks like she has taken such great care in what she is wearing, how she looks. And I know she has help with that. And I know there are rules, but like I said, you even just said, she could easily be annoyed with things. She could snap. There's all kinds of mistakes that she could be making, and she's choosing this other direction. And I have to commend anybody out there that is going through something tough or is constantly, I mean, sure, all of us are probably going through something. And pushing through that and taking the higher road, there's something to be said about that.
Well, there's other royals around the world that aren't as good at it as her, and they're in the spotlight too. So
True.
They don't all rise to the level that she has. Whether she's in just jeans, whatever she's doing, she always looks polished.
Okay, so we went over the appearance. Now we're going to talk about posture and poise. To demonstrate a lot of these, you need a lot of visuals. And we discussed maybe doing some of these for you all. And I can't even tell you how funny this conversation was. We were just kind of laughing because we were trying to figure out how we would demonstrate like a handshake and sitting. And we were just like, we're not the right people probably to film it. We probably don't have the right equipment to film it. And we probably,
I don't know about you, but acting is not my greatest talent. So
we want to give you the best possible visual examples in every video we do. So we actually chose 2 actresses to use as a positive and a not so positive. And it's not to shame anybody. The people that we picked, like, I don't want to say the actress that we picked for the negative is just like this awful person. It's just that we just so happen to notice very extreme positives and rather extreme examples of bad. So we chose Lily James. For the bad examples, we chose Amy Schumer. I love Amy Schumer. She's funny. She's not my humor per se, but I do think she is funny and she's really talented. But the reason why we picked her is because she's just very extreme with her mannerisms. And I think she demonstrates it probably on purpose for comedy, but it's just an example to show you what it looks like when you're not.
Because
so great
she's doing it for her business,
right?
But people actually do that and they're not on stage. Right. So that's what we're talking about.
I love that we chose Amy Schumer because we could have chosen a lot of really extreme, kind of like obnoxious actresses, but we chose her. One of the reasons why we chose her is because she is an attractive woman. And a lot of times that you see bad examples as women that are overweight and don't take care of themselves. They're not attractive. And that's not exactly accurate. A lot of times you can see a really beautiful woman who is not graceful and she becomes less beautiful. And so we wanted to show someone that was a little bit more attractive. For posture and poise, the first one is the handshake.
There's people disagree sometimes on this. I think when you shake someone's hand, nobody wants the dead fish handshake. Have you ever got that?
Oh, that's the
and
word.
From anyone. It's not good. And some people think, oh, it's feminine. Nobody likes that. I don't like it. But then there's also the grip that feels like it's going to bring the other person to their knees. You have to kind of shake your hand afterwards. And then there's the pumping one.
Ooh.
Or you just pump their hand up and down. And
How would you describe a ladylike handshake?
it's confident, not real long, not fishy. It's the way you offer your hand too. Fishy like dead fish.
Right. No, I totally know what you mean. I can't
Yeah.
stand the dead fish handshake. That's the worst. Well, in the places that I've worked, I had to shake the hands of so many men in the office that I worked in. And I remember feeling kind of like when I saw the person, it gave me an idea of how I should shake their hand. I know that sounds probably crazy, but I feel like when I went to shake the hand of like the CFO guy who was rather intimidating, I felt like I wanted it to be just a tiny bit firmer than what I normally do. I just felt it. I think you can read the person. Whereas the assistant down the hall, I went a little bit lighter. I don't know why. It was just intuitively with their personality and how they were. But I think you can read people and read how firmly you want to shake their hand.
Well, and if it's somebody that you know that you have affection for, but not so much that you're going to hug them, you might do this and then put your hand over it.
Yeah.
Two hands. And it depends on the person. You wouldn't do that with the CFO.
Yeah. If it's a man that you're meeting for maybe a date, I think you want to definitely work on that, perhaps practice it ahead of time, because you don't want to go into it and have the dead fish and then go, oh, whoops, I was supposed to do it firmly. And you want it to be confident. I like what you said about that. That's the best word for it, is confident. And then the next one is sitting.
A lot of us are guilty of this, of just basically plopping down in a chair. If you ever see it on TV, or you recognize it immediately, but sometimes we forget that if we do it ourselves, you just kind of fall into the chair, and rather than glide into it. It's not that hard to do it right. But then notice how you're sitting. And the other one is sticking your bum out really far before you sit down. Some of us do that. Kind of bed like this and lead with your bum,
Wait, are you saying that's a good thing or a bad thing?
It's not a good thing.
You were saying that? I thought you were giving that as advice. I was like,
no, don't lead the sit down with your bum.
Got it. Yeah, because then it's kind of, okay, I see what you're saying.
It's not attractive. It's just not attractive. It's not graceful.
You don't want an imbalance of weight at all. And this is really tough when you're tired or when you're just not even thinking about it. Maybe you go to a restaurant, they seat you at a booth and you have to slide to get in there.
Yeah.
It can be difficult, but I think I like the word that you said earlier, glide. Just think about gliding.
All you have to do is notice yourself doing it, practice it a couple of times. It's not that hard. You think, how do I sit anyway? And then you just sit and you think, oh my gosh, I was leading with my bum.
Another thing I'd like to say about sitting is just how you're sitting. It's not just about how you get to the chair, but when you're sitting in the chair, what are you doing with your legs? A lot of ladies, especially when you come home and you're just tired after work, or maybe you're relaxed after your kid's gone to bed and you're sitting down, your legs being open or crossed like a man.
Crossed like guys do, where it's just like straight like that. Cross.
Even just having them open, even your knees just being open. I'm not saying that you literally have to sit with them touching, but just being aware of how you're sitting how are your legs looking, especially us ladies that might have, not the smallest of legs. It's going to look even more masculine if you have a little bit bigger, like I have a little bit bigger legs. And when I sit with my legs open, I've caught myself a couple times in the mirror. I'm like, ooh, it just does not look nice. It doesn't.
Or if you sit with like this, with you can't really see my legs, but the legs apart, and then you're kind of like that with one hand on each leg.
It isn't just about how it looks, though. It's about how, like when I saw my reflection, that the time I was using as an example, it's about how it makes you feel. And I didn't feel good. I didn't feel myself. And you can accidentally slip into this habit where you're doing it all the time. And it just suddenly starts to feel like yourself, like these clips that we're showing of Amy Schumer. That's just who she is. That's just how she is. And you can see how with these clips, how she appears right next to Lily James. We show them side by side. Who feels more polished? Who feels more graceful? Who looks like they have stronger self-esteem? Lily James, it doesn't matter what movie she's in. It doesn't matter what role she's in. We can show her in jeans in the movie Yesterday, and then we can show her in Rebecca or Cinderella. It doesn't matter what she's wearing. She still acts the same way, no matter what role she's playing, what she's wearing, because that's just the role. That's just who she wants to portray. I don't know if that is who she is in her real life, but in her roles, she is consistently very ladylike. Whereas then you show Amy Schumer, every role she does, same thing. She is very unladylike. I feel bad saying mean things about Amy Schumer because I like Amy Schumer, but she's just a perfect example of how to not be ladylike. The next one is walking.
Walking is something that we can definitely do something about. Have you noticed some people kind of clunk or lumber, or they move like a locomotive? And you don't have to do that. And the easiest thing that I do is when I go into a store, you can always see your reflection and notice how you're walking, and you can correct it. Or in a mirror, not a mirror, the window of a store, as you walk past your reflection, and you can see and you notice your posture, your stride.
And this is where I think what you're wearing also comes into play. If you are constantly wearing tennis shoes, fine. But how do you walk in those tennis shoes? Or boots. If you're constantly wearing boots tend to, I don't know why, but a lot of us ladies kind of clunk a little bit more in boots. Walking with your legs far apart. You're going to see that in the Amy Schumer clips. She constantly walks with her legs far apart. That is kind of adopting a bit more of a masculine look to your walk. And it's going to make you feel more masculine. It's going to make you look more masculine if you're walking with your legs apart. Whereas you show these clips of Lily James, when she walks, doesn't matter what she's wearing. She walks with her legs closer together, and she has a little bit more of a delicacy with her steps. So this is just something you have to practice.
Yeah, if it doesn't come naturally to you, you can look and you can correct it in yourself. I think Nicole Kidman also walks very feminine. Every time I see her, she's no matter what she's in, she always does.
I feel like the ladies that are slimmer, I don't know, they always tend to just look more delicate. This can be tougher if you are a heavier set woman. You almost might have to work a little bit harder on it, just because I hate to say it, but I mean, I feel the same way with I have like bulkier legs. It's just naturally who I am. And I feel like I'm really always conscious of how I'm walking, because I don't want to look, I don't know, I just don't want to look heavy. I guess that's the best word for it. I don't want to walk and look heavy. I want to walk and look delicate. I think of that movie Fantasia with the hippos. Oh, yeah. How they're twirling and they look so delicate, and it's just, they look so delicate and pretty. And there's something so charming about that. I'm not saying that ladies out there are literally hippos, but I think about how if you're a little bit heavier, it's a little harder. You have to work a little harder in it. But okay. And then smiling.
Smiling is important. And some of us are lucky. And when we're not smiling, we kind of almost have an unconscious smile, but some of us, when we're not smiling, we look like we're mad. Yeah, and because it's kind of naturally like this. And so maybe for those of us that are like that, we can learn more to just smile more. Smiles are free, and they reflect how our attitudes about things, how we feel about people that we're around. You can even smile to yourself when you're alone.
When we're talking about the two examples of Lily James and Amy Schumer, you show the two of them. Amy Schumer is just like that. When she's not smiling, she does kind of look a little grouchy. She looks a little grumpy, and it's a perfect example of how she just doesn't look as ladylike. And you show Lily James, who's constantly smiling, even if it's not with her teeth. She almost smiles with her eyes.
Yeah.
That? The next one is hand movements.
Hand movements. By that. You can be very masculine or very feminine in your hand movements. It's a perfect way to show gracefulness, is the way you move, the way your hands move. And I've noticed that sometimes female politicians try to mimic like men. Yep. They do this thing, sharp, jabby kind of movements, and maybe they think that that's more power, a power thing. I don't know, but it doesn't really suit women very well. We have a different. Feminine power is different, and it's much more powerful than us than masculine power. So feminine power is part of this whole thing with gracefulness. And the way you move it can be mesmerizing and almost magical to men. Practice your hand movements, the way you pick up something. Just notice it. And you don't have to look in a mirror because you can see your own hands.
I think it's just about thinking about heavy versus delicate.
And smooth versus mechanical.
And robotic. I don't know about you, but me personally, when my nails aren't, like right now, they're not really done.
Mine are terrible.
My nails are not done and they're chipped, I almost have a tendency, I don't mean to do this, but I have a tendency to kind of hide them. And when they are done, I just have a tendency to kind of do a little bit more with them. And I feel more delicate when my hands are, I'm not saying that you have to have this perfect manicure all the time, but keeping them looking like I just did a bunch of yard work yesterday and you can see it. My nails, they're all like kind of like taking a beating. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with self-care. Taking care of your nails is going to make you have a little bit better hand movement. It's just about those small gestures, those tiny details in your hands.
And the way you use them, like the way you push your hair back or the way you brush something out of your face. You can practice these things and they become habit.
Then we have blushing. This one is really not discussed. If you look up physical grace on the internet, this is probably one you won't see very much. And I think that's what makes this list a little bit more unique.
Blushing is unconscious, so you can't control it. If you're not a blusher, you're not going to be. But some women, when they do blush, they're embarrassed, and they shouldn't be because it shows vulnerability and it's attractive. Showing vulnerability can be a good thing.
Well, and blushing it doesn't necessarily mean that your face is literally red or pink. Blushing, didn't you say this in your book? Blushing can even just be the feeling of blushing, meaning the feeling of vulnerability, which I found interesting.
But some women, you do, some women and men do blush when they get embarrassed, self-conscious, upset, but it can be an attractive thing. So don't try to hide it.
When you don't blush, that's okay. You can still show this, right?
Right. Like, for example, if somebody gives you a compliment and you're flattered, but it's also a little embarrassing because you don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And there's a feeling that if you were a blusher, you would blush. That feeling of kind of lowering your eyes is attractive.
So it's really about the vulnerability of it and not being afraid to let yourself have those moments of vulnerability because it contributes to your physical grace. Is that what you're saying? Physical
grace, which contributes to your attractiveness.
And then the last one is tone of voice. This is such a big subject. We actually did a tone video. So I apologize that we kind of were going to like skim over this because we just already did a video. You can just watch that video. We'll attach it to the screen. But this has to do with just practicing on how loud you are, how deep some ladies have a naturally deep voice, and that's
which is fine.
That's where we talk about how loud you are. This goes back to the same thing we keep talking about. Do what's right for you and your body with dressing for your body. If you're tall, if you're short, same thing with your tone. If you tend to talk really quickly, if you tend to be a speed talker, if you tend to talk too much, that all is involved with tone.
Well, and there's a word that Bob uses when he hears a woman that's particular that really gets to him is the word shrill. He doesn't like
ta, te, ti, to, tu. Ta, te, ti, to, tu.
And you can control those things.
And it's showing the examples with Lily James and Amy Schumer. I'm so glad we use them because Amy Schumer has a little bit of a lower, which is fine. She naturally has a little bit of a lower tone, but she not only uses the lower tone and goes fast a lot, but she also uses kind of sarcastic tones and she uses a lot of language. So you combine the low, talking fast, the sarcasm behind what she's saying, and then combine that with a lot of the foul language that she uses. It's just the most perfect example of unladylike tone.
Wow, I did not apologize. Are you serious right now?
Whereas you go to Lily James and she doesn't talk like that.
How am I supposed to know? How am I supposed to know anything if you don't tell me?
I think tone is just so powerful and we don't even realize how powerful it is. We don't even realize when we are not watching our tone. Again, don't mean to skip over this tone subject too much. We just did that video and it just is like so detailed with tone. So definitely watch that one if you want to learn more about tone.
I think this is something that is so doable for any of us to practice these things. You can change anything you don't like about it relatively quickly. And people aren't going to say you become a different person. You'll just be more charming.
Right. Well, thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe on our videos. It helps our channel grow. If you can do that for us, we really appreciate it. All of the links for places that you can find us on social media are attached to this video, as well as all the places you can buy Dixie's books and workbooks. And we're here every week. So don't forget to check back with us next time. And we'll see you then. Bye. Bye.